Welcome back to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. D. Marshall and I are talking with Jeff Carter, head of the Bergen, New Jersey NAACP chapter. Jeff, you made some points in the last segment that really hit me, and I was reminded of the freedom schools that was, back with the traditional civil rights movement, if you will, and the idea that if the systems that are in place are not teaching civic engagement, understanding the system, understanding voting rights, and many of the other things that you referenced in the last segment, that is a role that used to be played largely by churches in our community, and still could be played now by faith leaders and by people of faith in general to, as you said, not only teach the children, but teach one another about those things that both you and Dee have referenced, that in many ways, even when we want to change the system, we're trying to change the system that we don't often all the way understand, and we can't leverage a system that you don't understand. So talk a little bit more about what we could be doing as people of faith, and what faith organizations in our communities and faith leaders in our communities can be doing to, as you said, not just rely on the existing government system that is not always there to serve us, but again, to take some responsibility for getting people engaged, informed, and educated about their own power and responsibility.
Well, I think, again, the church has gotten away. Evangelism comes in more than one form. And evangelism can be in teaching, not only bringing people back to Christ, but informing people of what's going on. And it's important because, as this pandemic rages and we've been locked up in our houses, we've switched on our part from just being a civil rights organization, which we clearly are. And we've had book bag giveaways. Last fall we had, and I have wonderful people working with me. We had basically a carnival in late August, early September, because people had been cocooned in, and we had face painting, we had a magician, we had, but I always say a party with a purpose. So we had the county there, the hospital doing vaccinations. We had homeless, the county there with the homeless. We had the rental assistance. So we can't forget when we're doing things that we bring in. We brought in all the Divine Nine, and they were there represented. We seem to want to do things as individuals, and that's in the church. My church versus your church, and we're not in competition with each other. Where we should be unified. The same thing with the Greek letter organizations, and I'm a member of one. We have gotten away from our mission and forgotten what we are supposed to do, because we were here as educated Black men and women to help the community, and we are trying to check a whole lot of boxes, and as I call it, for show, and not and lacking a lot of substance. So it's important that we get back to our mission in the churches, and that we get out, work with each other, and that's going to be our plan. We have, as I said, voter registration, voter education, and then we're going to do, if you want to call it down in Georgia, but souls to the polls. This year, for the first year, we had early voting in New Jersey, and a lot of people didn't know about that. So we tried to, we had some kinks, but we tried to get people out early to vote. Don't wait until the last day. Go out and vote. The same thing with vote by mail. That was done during the pandemic, and that was a lot of issues because they were throwing people out because of their signature. The NAACP, our state branch, sued and won, because when you vote, it shouldn't be thrown out unless there's some reason that, and we call that voter suppression up here, even though it was not only African Americans, but it's still voter suppression. But we have to work with each other. That's the key thing. Gather all our allies, which should be everybody in our community, because when we win together, and when we lose together, and we can't forget that. But the key thing is we have a lot of church vans sitting around that could be taking people, and that's what we're going to do to the polls. Again, this doggone pandemic, we had a hard time again, in the past, because of social distancing, how we get people there, we don't want to get people sick. But prior to that, we utilized cars, we utilized church vans, we utilized any people that had vans to be able to get people to the polls, engaged. We need to go to our senior centers. Those are the people who vote. Make sure that they're engaged. Make sure that they know the issues. I'm going to one on Tuesday to talk with them about, making sure that they have a part of being a good leader is listening. And I try to listen to what the people in the community are saying, because they'll tell you, if you sometimes we get blah 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 and don't want to listen to what they say. But if we listen to them, a lot of times in all our small towns, we're having the same issues. So I'm starting my listening campaign. We've put it together, a voting committee, voting rights, voter education, and Jersey Souls to the polls in North Jersey, to make sure that we get people engaged. And we also are going to go into schools and try to get the youth groups. We have a youth group that is in the schools, talk about that with our AXO program, make sure that they are engaged. And it's important, because a lot of times we leave out the youth, and that's why we did the youth program, because I found that when we were doing MLK weekend, we were doing all adult things and we were leaving out the kids. Well,
Right.
I'm not going to be here forever, and we need to definitely engage our kids. So we're going to put an all-out push with the organizations. The Greek letter organizations have mentoring programs, and other groups have mentoring programs, and we're going to try to dive into those to make sure that we can get everybody that wants to be engaged.
What strikes me about all the things that you were saying, Jeff, and I'm going back to does it mean to really walk the walk of being a Christian, walk the walk of being Christ-like, and it's what we do for the least of these. So it's very easy for those of us who are, I'll say, more franchised than others. We got the degrees, we have businesses and careers and jobs, and it was said earlier, oh, I don't have kids in the school system anymore, so I don't really need to care about that anymore. It's very easy for the franchised to dismiss, to walk by. I'm thinking of the Good Samaritan story, where the religious leader and the scribe just walked by the guy who got beaten up and left by the side of the road, and the Samaritan said, I don't have to help this person, but I'm supposed to help this person. And so Dee, I know you have some strong thoughts about this because of the work that you do, but this idea that as church folk, as religious folk, we're not being Christ-like if we say, we're good, I'm good, my church is good, my community is good, therefore I don't necessarily need to engage with those who may be outside my community, outside my economic bracket, outside my fraternity, outside my church. That's not really my problem, and that's not Christ-like.
Yeah, I would just say to that, the church piece, what concerns me is that we need an entire new way and approach of even engaging, because even if you think about the church, Jeff and Alfred, the church has changed, and the church in many ways, according to Pew Research, is dying or at risk of dying based on Gen Y checking out, number one. And number two, and I know we have a minute left, so we may have to come back on the other side of the break and talk about this. Not just Gen Y checking, actually it was, millennials are checking out of church, but also just the new look and feel of what church now looks like. When we come back, I want to share, because I did an initiative with Sojo and with Dr. Barbara Skinner Williams. It was specifically to engage young pastors. And I created this brand YP1000 specifically to engage. You remember that? Yes, I pulled you in. So on the other side, guys, I would love to perhaps we just continue this conversation and just look at some of those challenges with the church should be the go-to, but it's the old church, Jeff and Alfred. But like, do we have that in the new church? Because the dynamics have changed, people have changed. So listen, hold that thought. We'll be right back. This is Be Lifted Up, and we'll see you on the other side of the break.